Question for the pod: who would have been the favorite if Edwin Valero had have fought Acelino Freitas? I always wanted that fight to happen. Who would the guys pick if it happened 2005-6 when both arguably in their respective primes? I don't think that was Valero's prime. I don't think Valero ever got to his prime because his ring IQ was going up. Andy, your thoughts?
I'm taking Valero, mate, every day of the week. Freitas is as good as what he was. He could punch as well. I just don't think he would have coped well with the pressure that Valero would have put on him. Maybe he would have dinged Valero up a wee bit, but that was just a mental wee bastard, to be honest with you. And I'm maybe kind of overhyping him a wee bit because of how his career ended, and he never really kind of saw his. He never achieved what he should have achieved, shall we say. But there's no dispute that Freitas in his own right was an absolute tremendous fighter. They even said he was about as equal in Brazil as to what Michael Jordan was in America. That's fucking massive, mate. So, as I say, he's a good fighter, but I just think, the ferocity that Valero would have brought actually would have seen it done in the end. Who can forget that fucking great fight that he had with Barrios and Freitas, which was also covering punches for the past. One of the all-time great endings, actually. We see Barrios just stood up on one leg, just teetering all over the place. It was absolutely tremendous.
It's my favorite fight from that era, and it got covered up by fights that other people lean on as fights of the year. Like Corrales, Castillo, and Gaddy Ward. And I'm sorry, for me, that fight, it's just there's something I love about it more, and it's just morbid with fucking Barrios wiping the blood off on the referee
and the referee's shirt. That's the thing.
It's just a jacked fight in a lot of different ways too.
But it is.
Freitas
guys
was great.
dropped down in both. Guys were dropped twice, I believe. Argentina against Brazil, big rivalry there. Didn't often get it in the fucking boxing world. When
atmosphere
you get two
was
guys,
class too.
It was even a filled out arena actually. To be honest with you, when you got two guys who are basically, well, there was a unified title on that, but I think Barrios had been a champion at one point as well. That the place was absolutely rocking, and then also, as it says, to have like Freitas end the fight and the manner of what he did, mate.
And he looked fucked in that 11th round.
He did. This is the thing as well, and it was close in the cards. I'm sure one was a draw, and maybe one was going either side, and it was all a fucking fight for in that 12th round, and he just turned it completely on his head. From what I can recall or can remember. I'm sure Freitas was on the back foot for a good portion of the fight, but as I say, some of those straight shots that he could get a lot of leverage in, especially in that right hand, and ultimately that's what paid fucking Barrios his fucking will at the end of the day. Who, by the way, I think Barrios ended up in prison at one point for killing a pregnant woman in a car accident. Right. I think it was done time in jail as well. So.
And Freitas and like this is an interesting. It's an interesting fight because Freitas's best was exceptional. He was just getting like a little worn down, I think, by the time he fought Juan Diaz and shit like that. But this is a guy who came back well past his prime, 20 pounds plus past his best weight, and fucking beat the shit out of Oliveira. Freitas is a true badass, and God,
Barrios fought as early as last year, by the way, mate, just to let you know.
That guy's had a fucked up life too, man. He went to jail for hit and run, vehicular manslaughter, and I think he was drunk. He's had a fucked up time.
That's right.
But
Freitas was fighting up at middleweight in his last fight, I believe. When was that? That's a good while ago, actually.
It's 5 years, I think, now at least.
He's also got a win over Zahir Rahim. He's got one over Zahir Rahim, who'd beat. I want to say that he beat Morales the fight before, I think. Mm-hmm. So that's not a joke win either.
He was a really incredible fighter. I mean, that was a good era for 130, 135. I mean, you had him, Corrales, Castillo, Casamayor. There were some fucking exceptional fighters around there, even before Pereira Morales moved up with fucking Spadafunk. If that guy could have kept himself straight, Steve, Jesus fucking Christ, man. Because he was a shell of himself, and he almost picked that title up. What was that, like 2015? It was a pretty close fight.
Yeah, at one point around super feather lightweight, you had Spadafora, Floyd, Freitas, Casamayor all floating about. Only Freitas and Casamayor ended up fighting each other. But I think this is an excellent question by Declan. But given that kind of timeline he sets there,
Corrales and Casamayor fought, didn't they?
yeah, they did. Yeah. Oh, Corral. Yeah, no, I wasn't sorry. I wasn't including Corrales. I meant like the sort of Freitas, Casamayor
Ah,
kind of era. But Freitas was a hell of a puncher, and he was a good. He'd beaten Casamayor in 2002. Then he beat Barrios in 2003. But I remember when he fought the fight after Barrios, Grigorian, he started looking like he was going through the motions to me. And then the next fight, he lost Corrales. So around this time frame that Declan's putting out, I think Freitas was on the wane by that point, and Valero, we don't know about his prime, but he was 2006. He beat Mosquera, so he was just starting to gather steam. So Freitas, he'd had a lot of fights by that point. He was a hell of a puncher. I'd say a few years earlier, Freitas, and a couple of years after Valero. Those, if we'd have had those versions, it would have been a hell of a fight. But I think Valero at this point in this particular, what Declan suggested, would have beaten Freitas.
Yeah,
I,
I'm sorry, mate. On you go.
I was gonna say, like, I would say, like, if you want a comparison of peak, you have to probably say Valero versus DeMarco and Freitas against Casamayor.
Yeah,
Fair?
yeah. And
Like,
Freitas Casamayor was a close fight too. Remember?
but Casamayor, what a great stylist he was, man.
Yeah, he
Tricky
was, he was.
fucker.
He could be negative at times. He really should have put his foot on the gas against Freitas. I think he let that fight slip. He let the judges give it to Freitas. He just wasn't active enough. And a Cuban, who saw that coming?
Yeah, just to let the guys know, obviously me and Steve did another Edwin Valero punches for the pass on the fight against Vicente Mosquera. First fight ever that you've seen Valero hurt and dropped. And it was a very passionate Panamanian crowd because Mosquera was obviously Panamanian. He had to go fight away from home. Could have jacked it that night if he wasn't mentally tough, but he fucking turned it on its head as well. So Valero showed his mettle as well, and he did it on the road in a hostile environment. He fucking revelled in it. As you say, what was the time frame again? What was the time frame of the question? 0506?
Yeah.
0506. Valero beat Mosquera in 6. By that point, Freitas was fighting. Was he fighting Raheem around that time?
Corrales,
the Corrales rematch, possibly.
Yeah. Certainly the Raheem fight. And the one there we go. Just pulled up this week. Raheem 06, Diaz 07. That was his last fight for over, I want to say, 4 or 5 years. Yeah, possibly might have just caught him at the right time, to be honest with you. But there's no question that Freitas was a quality operator. I mean, the names just don't lie on his record there. And as Steve says, the power was legit, absolutely legit.
Well, and Andy, the one thing you got to say you can't go entirely Valero on this one is the fact that Freitas was a good puncher. He was he was a good sharpshooter at his peak too, and Valero fought with that chin straight up in the air.
Straight in the air, mate. But it was again. We've seen him hurt. We've seen him dropped. I've always believed that Mosquera fight was proven to me that guy, even though he was losing the fight, even though he looked like he was going to get knocked out, that was the way he was going to fucking go. The guy was just mental. Freitas, I just don't know if it got to that level of like desperation of fucking wanting to die in the ring with that bastard. I'm not too sure. I'm trying to think, was the Barry Jones fight as well? Because Freitas fought Barry Jones. Was that Barry Jones' last fight as a pro?
It might have been. That was when he won the WBO off Jones, didn't he? That would have been about late 90s, was it? Early 2000s, something like that.
Possibly, aye.
Yeah, it was Barry's last fight as well. But you mentioned the cut. And David Valero, that just made him fight harder, those cuts. Look at DeMarco, man. The blood was pissing out of his head.
I think that wasn't a punch or a accidental clash. That was a fucking elbow that caught him. And a lot of people with a fucking maybe milked that. What did he do? He's like saying to the referee, elbow, taking over the doctor.
Who was the ref in that fight too? I mean, great job by that ref too, man. Like other than letting the 12th round start, honestly.
You want to give Lawrence Cole the fucking benefit of the doubt? Are you seriously going to say Lawrence Cole did a good job for
He
once.
did. Was that? I'll give that one to him. I'll
Yeah, it
give
was
that
Lord
one
School.
to him because
That
it
was
could
Lord
have, because
School.
that fight could have been stopped. I mean, God, that blood was nasty, but letting that fight go to its conclusion. I mean, it was amazing. I don't know. I like Freitas, man. Like, same reason I like Sergio Martinez. You know that they're stylists.
What about the
They're hard
size?
to duplicate, right?
What about the size difference and maybe the reach of Freitas? I need to go and check, but see what heights they were in there. But obviously they both fought at 130.
And
And
135. Yep.
well, I try to think, did Valero get a belt at 126? I can't remember. But anyway, Valero was just moving up to 135, and he was talking about moving up to was it 140 at that time to then fight Pacquiao?
He was chasing that Pacquiao fight. Everything
Yep.
he was doing, that would have been a fucking war, too.
Oh, Pacquiao, I think Pacquiao would have fucking killed him.
He would have chinned him at some point.
That is the peak. That's the peak version of Pacquiao we're talking about here. You know.
Anyways, yeah, that couple of good loopholes. Dez says the way Freitas fought against Casamayor makes me think he beats Valero. So I love that. That was a great discussion. Thank you for that one, Declan. That was fantastic.